Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. Today we need you to share this video far and wide. I went to go order some elastic because everyone is making masks for people who are on the front lines of this, who don't have access to adequate personal protective equipment. And all of the main distributors in the US are currently out of elastic, which means whoever has elastic already, great, sell it and help combat COVID-19. But if you are out of elastic and you are not able to find it, it's going to be a little bit before you can get more. So what I decided to do today, so that way you guys can all keep making masks while we wait for more to arrive, is show you how to make two different types of masks without elastic, how you can convert those patterns so you can make them with ties instead, because we all have extra fabric on hand and they may slip a little, but again, it's better than nothing. And just to reiterate what everyone else is saying, wearing a mask is not going to prevent you from getting COVID-19. Your best defense, if you're making this for personal use, is to just stay home. But if you are working with elderly or somebody who is immunocompromised, or your hospital doesn't have access to these and they're asking for them, then this is a really good way to help and support, and our community has really stepped up a lot in doing that. So I want to make sure that you guys know how to be able to do this and convert whatever pattern is that you're using. I'm going to show you two different ways. There's two different ways to prepare the tie strips depending on whether you have a curved top or whether you have a straight top for that. So we're going to go over that today. We'll go over both of the masks, so it'll also be kind of a mask tutorial. There's a ton out there, but basically I'm just going to show you how to convert the pattern. And please share this, because this is a time when we all have to come together. And if your communities are asking for these, please step up and make some so that we can help get through this all together. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I have right now two 6x9 inch masks. I'm going to link to where the patterns are. This is the pattern that was put out by the Deaconess Hospital in Indiana. They have now created a database because the response they received from the news coverage about this has been so overwhelming that they have more than they can use, and so they have a database of places that can use them as well and that are asking for them, because not all hospitals are asking for these and will accept them. So you want to make sure you get hooked up with someone that can do it. And it's not just hospitals, it's nursing homes and places like that as well are wanting to have these to help at least prevent people from touching their own face and help prevent this spread as much as possible. All right, so what we're going to do with this is we're going to change the instructions a little bit. The original instructions tell you to sew all the way around the sides, leaving a small opening on the bottom. And as you do that, you're going to put some elastic in on the sides. And if you can't get elastic, then what you're going to do is we're just going to sew down the sides here, and then we're going to put a piece of essentially double fold binding over the top and bottom that's going to serve as the ties that can go around. So what we need to do is there's a seam allowance in here. It's a 1/4 inch seam that gets turned over when that gets turned inside out. So the first thing you want to do is the side that would have been turned under and a seam here is we're going to cut a 1/4 inch off the bottom and the top, so that way. So this is just like if you're sewing a quilt block or a garment and you have a seam allowance, we're essentially removing the seam allowance. So I'm just going to flip that around. You could, I suppose, just take off a whole 1/2 inch and that would be fine too. But this will definitely work well for you. All right, so now if we look at this, instead of being 6 inches tall, it is now 5.5, which would have been the finished height of the mask before you put in the pleats. So now what we're going to do, there's something else that's a little bit different here. So we're going to lay these guys right sides together, and I'm just going to sew up the two sides here because we don't have elastic, so we don't need to put anything on the inside. So we're going to do that real quick. So now I've got openings at my top and bottom. I'm going to flip them right sides out. And I'm just going to press the seam so that it's nice and flat and that the seam edges are right up to that edge of the fabric. All right, I'm going to set this to the side for now, and we're going to prepare the strings that are going to go around to tie in the back of the head. All right, so I've got a 2" by width of fabric strip here, and that should be more than enough to go all the way around the head and tie. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unfold it, and then we're going to start preparing it the way we would quilt binding. So we're going to start by just folding that in half, hot dog style, and matching up our raw edges. Now this next part, if you've ever made a bag and you've had to make your own bag handle, this is pretty similar. What you're going to do is unfold it, and using this crease as your guide, you're going to fold your fabric in and press it down. And I find that it can be easier to do this one side at a time. Just watch your fingers. You don't want to burn yourself while you're doing this. And then once you've got one side down, what you can do is you can just fold the other side and match it to it. You kind of want it to be about the same. So now we've got a little piece of bias tape as well. It's not bias tape, but it's like bias tape, where it's like a double fold binding. It's going to be a 1/2 inch wide, and it's going to sit real nicely over the top and the bottom of our mask. I'm going to go ahead and continue doing this all the way down my strip, and then also do it on a second one for the other side of the mask. Now, if you want to, you can leave your edges with the selvages just as they are, because we don't have to worry about those fraying, or you can always snip them off and fold your edges in for a neater finish. But just for speed's sake today, I'm going to go ahead and just leave the edges as they are with the selvage, because you don't have to worry about that unraveling with use and washing. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put these on the top and bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and find my center. I'm just folding it in half and then pinching at the center here. I'm going to give it a little press to give myself a good visual. Do the same thing for the second one. And then I'm just going to take the mask and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and fold that in half, and I'm going to go ahead and give that a little press, the top and bottom as well, just so that I can mark that really quickly. All right, so when you open this up, what we're going to do is we're just going to slide the mask with the raw edges right into the top half of this. So this should be right even with the fold, right at the top of that. And you should be marking up where we press all those edges in. So you should be able to feel there should be no gaps or anything in this. Then go ahead and put a little pin in there. And then I'm going to also make sure that we are lined up on the right and left sides and pin those in place as well. All right, so I've got that in place, and we will have equal amounts on either sides of our mask. So now what I'm going to do is, keeping everything nice and folded over like this, I'm just going to stitch all the way down and across that entire width of fabric, making sure that I'm catching all the folds as I do it. Now what I'm doing here to line everything up is I've got my presser foot even with the edge of that double fold. I'm going to go ahead and move my needle all the way over as far as it'll go. So I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch seam. That should catch everything. And then also make sure that you are reinforcing your stitches at the beginning of this so that they don't unravel with time and use. All right, I'm now coming to the part where the mask is, so I'm going to go ahead and slow down so I don't go over a pin. Go ahead and pull that out. Sew over everything. And then keep on going till the end. All right, when I get to the very end, I'm going to make sure to reinforce those stitches, lock those in place so that the threads don't come undone with use. And now I'm going to repeat going down the other side. All right, so when you get done, make sure to just pull these up. Make sure you don't have any raw edges poking out anywhere, especially on the back. That's where it's most likely to have happened. And then also check along your edges as well to make sure everything is good to go. All right, so now it's time to make the tucks, and you're supposed to do 3 evenly spaced. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew down, and I'm actually going to sew just to give it an extra layer of stability. I'm going to sew all the way around all of this twice just to give it a really good strong stitch. And if you can stitch over where you were before, that's great. If not, you know, it just needs to be functional. It doesn't need to be fabulous. All right, so I'm actually going to start in one of the strap seams. That way the stress of it is in a place, like that's like the weakest point of the seam. So you don't want it to be like on the sides where it could pop open with the pleating. So you're going to sew until you get to the edge. And then just pull your pins out as you're coming to them. Then when you get back down to the strap, you can go ahead and turn directions. Go all the way down. Turn again, and this time we're going against the pleats. Just go slow so you don't break any needles or thread or run over pins. All right, so I made it around once. I'm going to do my second pass around, just for a little bit of extra stability. Now I'm going to sew just a little bit beyond where I started, reinforce those stitches, and then that's complete. All right, so here we go. We have a nice pleated mask here, and there's no elastic, so you're going to be able to make it even if you can't get any. Now, if you're going to make a mask that is curved at the top, then you need to create it a little bit differently when you are altering your pattern, and also when you are creating your straps. They've got to be done on the bias, so that way they will curve around that curve of the nose bridge. So this is the one that I personally am going to be making for my family. Do your own research, figure out what you want to do for this one, but I liked it because it included space for an adjustable feature on the nose. The Sewing Therapy, who came up with this, I'm going to link to all the tutorials, the original tutorials and patterns in this. They used a recycled clip from an actual mask, and then also patterned this from one of the N95 masks. And it has have a pocket to where you could put a filter in it if you were able to get one, or if you were a hospital and you needed to have these, but we're able to put the filters in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm still going to remove the 1/4 inch from the top and the bottom seam. And also for the ear side area, this gets folded over twice, and then elastic gets stuck on the inside here. So I'm going to cut this side piece in half to also remove the seam allowances from that section. All right, so I'm redrawing this just a little bit. I'm lining up my 1/4 inch, or what would have been my 1/4 inch seam, that now is just going to stick in the top of that mask. And I'm just going to draw along there to create my new line that I'm going to cut from. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. And then in this original pattern, again, this was folded over twice. We're not going to do that here because we don't have elastic to stick in it. So I'm going to also remove my 1/4 inch from that as well. So now when I cut, I'm going to cut, basically start here, come up to where these guys intersect, come up again to where they intersect, and then come over, and then I will cut on this because that is going to remain the same. That is still going to be a seam that is sewn. Alright, so I'm just going to pin this pattern now in place now that we've altered it, so that way we are going to remove the seam allowances that are just going to be covered with the string, the ties. And now I'm just going to cut all around this as well. So for this pattern, you're going to need a front, a back, there is a filter pocket, and for that part, all you're gonna have to do is just fold up on the line, and then it will just come in a tad bit. So I'm gonna get the mask together, and then I'll show you how to combine, do the straps so that it is on the bias. So since this one has a filter pocket, what we're gonna wanna do is just fold this in twice. That way, and you know, about a 1/4 inch is fine. And that way we can have a nice seam here to enclose all of our raw edges. Now I'm just going to stitch along these lines to secure them down. Now you're going to take all of these and you're going to sew them right sides together. If you want to pin, you can. It should be exactly the same size if you've cut them at the same time, so you should be able to skip that if you want, but you can always just put pins on the sides and then just go for it from there. Just like you chain piece in quilting, you can also chain piece these pieces to speed it up. Alright, now you just want to clip these curves about every 1/2 inch or so. You want to make sure you're clipping almost to the seam but not into it, or you're going to have it come apart on you. So just help the seam line nice and flat when you press it open. Alright, so now I'm going to give this a press. Now one of these is going to just slip inside the other, like that. So this one you can skip pressing, and this one as well is going to stay this way. Alright, so we're going to set our lining piece to the side for now, and what we're going to do is we're going to stick these one inside the other so it's right sides together, and we're going to go ahead and sew our side seams together the same way we did for the big mask, just this one is a lot smaller. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin those to keep them nice and together. Now just like the other one, we're going to flip this so that the right sides are now facing out, and we're going to press our side seams. Alright, now you've got it both sticking out. We're going to push it so that everything is going in the same direction, and we're going to go ahead and pin to get it so that our seams are going in opposite directions. Do the same thing on the bottom, make sure they're going in the same direction as they were on the top. And whatever the lining side is, you're going to place the wrong side of your lining in there as well, and you're going to open that up, and you're also going to pin that in place. Again, make sure you've got your seams going in the same direction on the top and bottom. Now you can go ahead and pin on the outsides, and we're going to do a little stay stitch along this. So a stay stitch, you just want to move your needle as far to the right as you can, and then you're just going to sew along the edge to get everything nice and joined before we start adding our strips. So now we've got our mask front and our mask back, which has the pocket where the filter can fit in. And all our layers are secured together with that little stay stitch, so that way we can easily add our strap to the top and the bottom. Part where we need to do the straps, and this is the main difference, is that when you have a curve like this, you cannot use a straight of grain fabric to go over it because it's not going to go over that curve. So I'm going to show you real quick how you can do this on the bias. It's really simple. All you're going to do is you're going to take your fabric, you're going to turn it at a right angle like this. And I still want to have 2-inch wide strips, but for this first one, since I'm going to be cutting along that fold, I'm going to cut that, lining up the 1 inch with my fold, and all the other strips I'm going to cut at 2 inches. Now I'm just going to join these the way I would quilt binding, where I'm going to lay one to the side and one straight forward. And then I'm just going to sew from corner to corner to join those. And this works really good if you just prep a whole bunch of it ahead of time. And if you use yardage, that is preferable because then you can end up with longer strips. Now, if you have a bias binding maker, you can use this for both the straight and the bias one that we're about to do. What you're going to do is you're going to get it on a corner and stick that through. And then you use a little pin until it sticks out the edge. And then it is automatically going to fold that in half for you. So that does some of the work. So then you can take your iron, press that down. And then all you have to do is pull, and it folds over. Pull a little more, and it presses it as you go. So that makes that a lot faster as you're going. Once you make it through and you've done your entire strip, you're going to go ahead and fold that over and press that down again, so that way we've got our both sides. Alright, so I've already pressed in the center of where this belongs. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and the same way we did before, and just go ahead and put that right in the center and get that pinned in place. I'm going to go ahead and work my way out as well. I'm going to put a few extra pins in this one because it is a curve, so it is not going to be as straightforward as the square one. And the one thing that I really liked about this pattern and why I chose it to make for my family is that it has where you can put a little twist tie, or people have used pipe cleaners, or in the actual pattern she used a recycled nose clip from an actual mask. But I've got an entire box of these. I bought them for something that I thought we were going to use. There's at least 1,000 in here. If you buy anything from us over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com and you're making these, just tell me how many you want and we will ship them to you while we've got them. But what I'm going to do here, and just no cost, just tell us in the notes how many you're making and we'll get it for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip that in, or I'm going to actually mark my halfway point here first. So I kind of have an idea of that. So I just folded that in half. Then I'm just going to slide this in to the mask. And I can feel where that bend was. So I'm going to slide the other guy in there as well. I'm going to move this over a little bit. So what I'm going to do when I sew this now is I'm going to just do a zigzag stitch to get this all together. And that way, when it's going to go right over that, the same way if you were like going over a zipper tooth or something. And that way this will be bendable and you can mold it to your nose, the bridge of your nose, and help get a little bit more secure fit. So that's why I like this one. That's why I'm doing it for ours. And again, I'm going to link to this original tutorial and pattern in our video description. The other thing I'm going to do a little bit differently, because we don't have a selvage edge here, is what I'm going to do is as I get started, I'm just going to fold in by about maybe half an inch or so. And then I'm going to fold that in again. That way we've got a nice secure edge there that isn't going to fray. And then you can just kind of do that as you go. Alright, so I've got my zigzag stitch selected. I'm going to sew in place quite a bit there, again, to lock those stitches in place. Alright, now I'm coming to the actual mask. So I've got my needle down securely in the first half there. So I'm just going to kind of arrange it and flatten it out as much as I can. Zigzag stitch to secure everything. Alright, I've got about 3 or so inches left. So this is the point where I'm going to go ahead and open that up, fold it in, and then fold my edges back in. So that way I have a nice folded edge on the end instead of a raw edge that could fray with use. Alright, I'm to the end, so I'm going to go ahead and reinforce those stitches pretty good. And then break the threads and do the other side. Alright, so this is the top where I have that twist tie tucked in place. So I'm actually going to widen up my stitch a little bit here. So that way I definitely end up on the sides of that. And secure it in place. And I can actually feel it in there. So I'm just trying to make sure that's nice and centered. Alright, now that I've reached the end of that top part, I'm going to go back down to my regular standard size and finish the rest of the strap. Alright, so that's really nice. That is really bendable. You can see that you would be able to really easily get that attached to your nose and securely around the bridge, which is again why I really like that pattern. It also has this pocket for a filter. Even if you just want to put a little extra fabric in it, it's better than nothing. Again, this is not going to stop you from getting the coronavirus. The best defense is to stay home. But if your healthcare providers are calling for these as a preventative measure, and because they have nothing else, or maybe other facilities that help care for people in nursing homes or who are immunosuppressed in any way, if someone in your community is calling for that, then please, if you can make a mask, make a mask. Please share this video because, like I said, all of the 4 major distributors of Sewing Notions are currently out of elastic. So if you have been using elastic to make it and you can no longer find it, this is a good alternative for it, of using straps. So again, we showed you how to alter either a curve pattern by making a bias, or a straight pattern where you can just use straight grain fabric that you cut across the width of fabric. Either work, but this is a good alternative if you are unable to find elastic, because that's another thing that we now have a nationwide shortage of, is 1/4 inch elastic, because all of you have responded en masse to make these, which is fabulous, and now you can keep on doing that. Again, stay home. It's the best defense, but if your community is calling for these, please do it. We've got links below to where you can see the original patterns for these with the instructions, written instructions, and sizes. Remember, you're going to take a 1/4 inch off of the top and bottom of each of them, because you're not going to be using that in the seam allowance. And you're essentially going to be sewing them just on the sides with right sides together, flip it out, and then you're going to add your straps to the top and the bottom, and that is how you're going to get your workaround. If you have a bias tape maker, that is helpful. It makes this process go a lot faster, but you don't need one to be able to do this. Please stay safe. I hope we're all going to get through this. It's going to be okay. And I think it's fabulous that we're part of a community that is always willing to pitch in and help when it's needed. So here's a way you can do that if you can no longer find elastic. I know we're not able to get it for several weeks. So it is what it is. And we're just going to make do with what we have. And that is, I feel like, what a lot of us are doing right now. And we will persevere. We'll make it through this. And here's your tips. Here's how you do it. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. Go sew some masks. Be a part of the solution. And stay home and sew. All right. Until next time, happy quilting.